have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
And I'm Merryn Johns.
Sitting in for Ann Northrup, who will be back next week, but it's so great to have you here.
It's great to be here after last night.
Yes, because, and we will give you our analysis of the so-called debate between Harris and Trump.
And we'll also check in with Tim Walz and his passionate discussion of our community at the HRC dinner.
Yep. Delaware, this is big news, is going to send the first transgender person to the United States House of Representatives.
And we have court wins for trans students in both New Hampshire and Arizona.
Pro-LGBTQ states are now bidding for LGBTQ tourists that Florida apparently doesn't want.
And sad news out of Wisconsin. A 19-year-old young man by the name of Mika Laureano was killed by his cellmate just for being black and gay.
And stories emerged that 14-year-old Georgia school shooter was bullied in school and kids would call him gay. We don't know what he was, but there was bullying going on.
Apparently, according to the dad. And we have some interesting news from Sweetbriar College, an all-women's college. It's breaking with most women's schools by banning trans female students.
The new Chief Justice of Tonga is an out gay man.
It's very interesting. We'll take a visit to the South Pacific later in the show. And also in a village in Colombia, in the Amazon, a trans woman has been elected as the chief.
That's quite a story. And we mourn the loss of Irish feminist journalist Nell McCafferty. She has died at the age of 80.
We have an update on MPOX vaccines for you.
Yep, because, and we should say, if this is the only part of the show you're watching, in New York State, it's going to be available at pharmacies without a prescription. And then two Evan Hansons tied the knot with each other.
Right.
We will find out.
What are the odds of that?
Okay, so the big event of the week was the they call it a debate, but they're not allowed to even question each other between Harris and Trump. What I thought she killed it.
I did. I think she got off to a bit of a nervous start. I felt that she sounded a little bit fragile at the beginning to me, a little bit anxious, and I think the reason for that is because she has so much on her shoulders. She knows the stakes of this debate. And also, he's probably pretty damn scary to be standing next to. She'd
never met him before.
She'd never met him before. And, you know, I really loved the way she crossed the stage, she extended her hand, and she introduced herself. And I think that was really brave.
He backed away from her.
He wasn't going to do that at all. So I think that was a very, very smart thing to do, that her intentions were going to be transparent and civil.
And he was so tempted to start hurling what he does at his rallies, which is to hurl abuse at her and call her a horrible woman and a horror show and a this and a that. But he felt a little constrained about that. But he was angry through the whole thing, and she made him angrier. She got to him. Mm-hmm. You know, when he debated Hillary Clinton, she was the first woman candidate of a major party in the United States, and she was walking a tightrope. You know, if I'm too aggressive, they're going to call me a B word or something.
Absolutely.
So, but Harris just was firm and wasn't going to take anything from him and just let him have it. And I thought she did tremendously.
I do, and I think the tones were quite different. And what we had on display here were not, two old men duking it out, which we've seen before. What we had was a woman who has a big streak of vulnerability, if I can say. We've built up this image of her as being this kind of like prosecutor figure. Some of her voice, the emotion in her voice, and it was an emotion of caring, that she actually cares for us. And I think Trump's focus was very much on how presidential he could come across, how kind of masculine and paternalistic he could be, and of course, how great he is and how everyone says he's great. All the world leaders, right. Viktor Orban says he's great.
Well, nobody raised LGBTQ issues in this forum, not the moderators and not the candidates, except Trump likes to beat that business. Anything anti-transgender, he's going to work it in, and he did. And he went after her, saying, she's for transgender surgeries for illegal aliens, and I'm quoting him, in prisons. Now, people who are in prison, whether they're legal or not, deserve medical care, whatever is the appropriate medical care. That's the answer to the question. But of course, it's something that they're going to run with and say this is what she's for, and people will say, "Oh, I don't think I'm for that." Why should they have that? And so it's an issue.
It was very quickly glossed over. We did not come up as a question.
Yeah.
Now, I'm very surprised by that. Is that because, ABC have been already accused of being a little bit nonpartisan here, but why don't you think they brought our community up and used it as a wedge issue?
Well, they did act like the right wing is furious at ABC for fact-checking him. They fact-checked him 3 times. He told 33 demonstrable lies. They could have, and they would have gotten tired fact-checking him. The New York Times did a 3-page spread on the issues of the day and where the candidates stand. Right. They didn't even include us. But that's not going to stop the Republicans. It's the Republicans at this point. Everybody knows that Kamala Harris is pro-LGBTQ because she has been forever. And of course, his supporters try to say, "Oh, he's the most pro-gay Republican." Give me a break.
No.
The people he's hired are anti-gay bigots. And the people at Project 20, he was trying to get away from Project 2025.
That was very interesting. He said he hadn't read it. He didn't know anything about it.
No.
It's out there.
He said, "I haven't read it, but there's some good stuff and there's some bad stuff." Well, maybe you read it then. And maybe, because everybody who you've ever hired, who you haven't fired, were the people who were writing it. It is the blueprint for a future Republican administration, whether it's Trump or somebody else.
It's very interesting. Yes. I felt he started quite strong. I think he started fairly strong, fairly competent. I thought, he's going to be very cool. And then there was a turning point for me when Kamala was speaking about abortion and women's rights, and I really feel she gained the advantage there. She came across as knowledgeable and absolutely heartfelt.
And passionate.
And I don't think he understood what he could say about it.
Well, he doesn't know what to say because he doesn't know where he stands. Basically, I'm sure he's paid for a lot of abortions for his mistresses.
Well,
and so he doesn't know where he stands, and yet he's the one who got rid of Roe v. Wade by getting these right-wing crazy justices on the court, and he's stuck with that. And then he couldn't say whether he's going to sign or not sign a national abortion ban.
Veto. And I think this is a big tactical error here by saying that J.D. Vance is out there in the field saying he will sign the veto.
No, J.D. Vance is saying he won't sign it.
He won't sign it.
Yeah.
It's just too confusing.
Because look, you don't have to have a good memory if you speak the truth. But they don't know how to speak the truth. 33 lies. They said that Harris told a lie too. Sure. Who doesn't in politics?
Which was her lie? Which one was
I
hers?
don't know what it was. It was whatever. But so
the executing babies at 9 months has to be the low point of the debate. That had to be really quite.
He's out of his mind.
Yeah.
And,
or the eating the cats, I think. Eating the cats in what state in the Midwest? Are they eating cats and dogs? I think that was already debunked.
Yes.
And he said, "But I saw it on TV." They're saying it on television.
And then when he's questioned about health care, he says, you're gonna hear something very soon, which is what he's been saying for 10 years about everything. I'm gonna have a plan very, very soon. He was president for 4 years. He was going after her saying, "Oh, if she's for all these things, why didn't she do it while she was vice president?" But
he said her policies are like run, spot, run. It's 4 sentences. That was hilarious. I actually will say I laughed out loud 4 times last night.
What?
I laughed out loud watching it. It was actually comical, some of the stuff he was saying. With healthcare, I think he said, I have a concept of a plan, was what he said.
But again, he promised an infrastructure bill for 4 years, never delivered. Biden did. He just doesn't do things. He's all talk and no saddle. Or an old hat, and I forget what the expression is.
Here was some
apologize.
Here was some other zingers. I loved that we are going to be, if we elect the Democrats, we are going to turn into Venezuela on steroids. Thought that was interesting. The second turning point, if I have to look at this like a Hollywood screenplay, for me, the sort of narrative structure, he went completely off the rails when she said, let me tell you something about Donald Trump's rallies. People leave early because they're bored and exhausted.
Yes.
And he lost his mind. I think he completely lost the thread.
And then he's like a baby. He's like, no, nobody goes to your rallies. You pay them. It's just, what a fool.
That was great.
But again, we've seen that he's a fool forever. I've lived in New York for, I've seen him for 40 years and thought he was despicable and unbelievable. But half the country still supports him out there. And then they say things like, I was paying less for bacon in those days. Well, look, yes, inflation was bad. By the way, inflation went down to 2.5% today.
Today we've dropped. What else stood out for you?
Well, that the thing about eating the pets was a meme that was developed, or a falsehood. It was put on Haitians who are really speaking up about this. And it's racist. They always want to work racism into their presentation. Yeah. That these foreign color, people of color are the one. They wouldn't call them people of color. But they are the people who are hurting you and eating your pets.
Right.
It's pure racism. Even Dana Bash said it last night.
I've never heard of it. I've heard of Santeria and killing live chickens, but I haven't heard of eating dogs for dinner in the Caribbean. Haven't. Sorry.
I eat chickens and pigs and cows. Some people object to that. I understand that. He also completely abandoned Ukraine. And of course,
when
completely abandoned Ukraine.
He was directly asked about Israel, and he pivoted to Russia and what Putin was doing without even really answering.
And he only cares about the Russians who died in the war, not the Ukrainians.
Yeah, it was very strange.
And she was very clever to say, hey, there are 800,000 Polish Americans or people of Polish descent in Pennsylvania. You're next if he lets Putin take over Ukraine. And that's a fact.
Yes.
So, anyway.
What else?
Well, I think we should move on to the endorsement of the week.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yes, it was very, very heartening. We've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Will Taylor Swift come out and officially endorse Kamala Harris? Right after the debate, she took to Instagram, which is her medium of choice, and she posted herself holding her lovely cat and basically said, I've weighed it all up, I've looked at all my options, I've done my research, you should too, and I'm getting behind Kamala Harris. And as you can see at this point, this morning when I looked in here, we had 7.5 million likes. I believe it's up to about 9 now, Mr. Humm.
Yeah. She's got 283 million followers. Not all are Americans, and many of them are underage. I see you were very kind to put my like up there on the screen there.
The eagle-eyed audience members will see that Andy liked it, so did I.
I did.
But look, it is a pivotal moment. It's another kind of sign about who won the debate. If you looked at the share price this morning of Donald Trump's Trump media, they'd plummeted by about 14.5%. They're right about 13 now. Right. And meanwhile, alternative energy shares have gone up. So that's a pretty...
Because she's in favor of alternative energy.
Yes, of course. And the stock market is a little bit of a canary in the coal mine here, telling us who won.
All right. Now, one of the things I wish she had done, because, people say, what are your positions on anything? Well, this was the week that she posted all of her positions on her website.
Finally.
So you can go to her campaign website, and it now contains a detailed issues section.
It's not spot run, no.
Including protecting LGBTQ Americans in healthcare, housing, employment, and more. It also highlights how Trump's Project 2025 will eliminate federal rules that protect LGBTQI people from discrimination. She contrasts all of her positions with Project 2025's dystopian plan. And while Trump tries to disown Project 2025, as I said, his people wrote it. The only people that he can draw from the next administration are the people who wrote it. And she's honored to have, this is kind of quite surreal, Anne would call this surrealism in everyday life. Kamala is honored to have the endorsement of that war criminal Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney. Now, they're conservative Republicans to say the least, but it certainly does shake things up a little bit.
Well, the third turning point was when she said, and let me tell you how many Republicans support me, like 200.
Yeah, and people who work for him and people who have no respect for him and they think you're a disgrace. And
she said disgrace twice.
Yes, that's one of his favorite words. All right. Last week, the Times published a piece about historians starting to acknowledge that now here's the thing, the system that we're in. Why are we even worried about this election? I mean, if we had a normal system of electing a chief executive, she would win easily, but we have this electoral college thing. And historians are starting to look at this and say, look, our Constitution is the problem. Trump has mastered using the Constitution to get what he wants. And we have minority rule in this country now as a result. And it is time to really, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in this election. I hope we get through it, but that's not enough. We need better systems of governance. That's a big job for you young people out there. And others, everybody to get together. And, you know, who would adopt a system like ours, where you have a Senate where everybody gets 2 votes, no matter how much population they have, that kind of stuff. It's just terrible.
Well.
All right. So, Tim Walz.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who Trump calls terrible, or he says,
oh, he's the worst. I mean,
He's the
oh
worst.
God, he's for letting anybody in. He's for trans everything. Yeah, okay. So he was at the Human Rights Campaign, and he gave a passionate endorsement of LGBTQ rights. He talked about what it means to be an LGBTQ ally.
Allyship is a great thing, but what many of you in here knows is it's easy to be an ally when it's easy to be an ally. What really matters is knowing who's going to be at your side and stand up when it's hard. And it was in those moments that those students inspired me years later. Look, I'm a 40-something guy with little kids who is teaching school, trying to pay the mortgage. The idea of running for office never got to me or thought about it, but those students inspired me. And what they saw in me is what I was trying to instill in them, this commitment to a common good, a belief one person can make a difference in other people's lives. So in 2006, I took the leap, ran for Congress. No one told me at that time, and I, of course, apparently couldn't Google it. In that district, there had been one other Democrat since 1892. And in that red district, I was in a state that had banned same-sex marriage for a decade. But I knew I was right, and I ran on the platform that supported equality. And this is what I said. I got asked at a debate if I supported civil unions. I said, sure, if that's your thing. But I said, my marriage to my wife, Gwen, is the most important thing in my life. I love her deeply. Why would I stop anybody else from marrying the person they love? That makes no sense. Now, this was 2006, and some of you with a little more gray hair or less of it can remember this time, that the other side said, oh, a B-rate candidate finally showed his true colors by saying this. Well, as it turned out, a majority of my neighbors agreed with us, and they elected me to represent them in the United States House. And after it was over, some people came up to me and said, wow, you won in spite of being pro-choice and pro-gay marriage. And I said, no, you've got this wrong. I won because I was for those positions. That's why we won.
So people will vote for people of true conviction and who actually do stand for something, and that was terrific. I would run this whole speech if I could. It was about a half hour, and I'm going to link to it in our email so that you can watch the whole. It's a terrific speech. We're going to show one more section of it.
Yeah.
He talked about how Minnesota acted to end censorship of LGBTQ books and those on race and gender in school libraries.
And we did something a little bit. We banned banning books, especially banning LGBTQ books for themes in that. Think about it in this room. This is what these folks are focusing on, spending all their time. Like reading about 2 male penguins who love each other is somehow going to turn your children gay, and that's what you should worry about. But here's what I'll tell you. It's a fact of life. Some people are gay. But you know what's not a fact of life? that our children need to be shot dead in schools. That's not a fact of life. Folks are banning books, but they're okay with weapons of war being in our schools. Look, that's not this country. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't happen elsewhere. We're going to make sure our children are seen, they bring their authentic selves, and then we're going to make sure they're safe when they get there. So thank you all.
I can't wait till he debates J.D. Vance.
He's a really good speaker.
Because he's picking up on J.D. Vance, who said, you know, school shooting, well, it's just a fact of life. We just need to secure the schools more. What the hell are you going to do? You got to get rid of these weapons.
It's not a fact of life, and if it happens in any other country, they caught it from here.
Australia took care of it.
Yeah, we took care of it, yes.
Yes, with the conservative government.
Yes.
You know, all right. So Trump had a hell of a week besides this forum. He got another get-out-of-jail-free card. He was not sentenced when he should have been.
Yeah.
I was very disappointed in Judge Merchan, who said, oh, I don't want to interfere with the election. I mean, come on. No one is supposed to be above the law. He should have been sentenced.
Yes.
He tried to overturn the verdict in the E. Jean Carroll defamation case, and he was dogged by our friends in Rise and Resist. They were down there at the courthouse. Felon, psychopath, criminal, pay up, deadbeat, liar. That's what their sign said. There's our friend. I mean, they're all our friends,
all our
but
friends.
Jackie Rudin there.
Oh, Jackie. Hi, Jackie.
Towards the right of
Terrific.
the frame. She's holding the pay up, deadbeat sign.
Yes, I like it.
They were all over the television. They provide the visuals for the press about what Trump is all about. And they go out around, that gets out around the country.
Yeah, it's nonviolent, but it is direct action.
So, you know, as I said, he lost the Cheneys this week. And his line about kids getting gender confirmation surgery in school during the day, it's 100% bonkers.
That was hilarious. They go to school one thing and they come home transgender.
They come home and after an operation, they get the operation in school. I mean,
is that happening in the PE, in the gym? Where is that happening?
And so Mary Trump, Donald's lesbian niece, had a third book out about him and their family. She writes that Donald's brother was seriously ill. Donald's mother was seriously ill and psychologically unstable. She's a psychologist herself. And that her grandfather, Fred Sr., was a sociopath. By the way, Kamala didn't bring up about anything about Trump's family, but his father, who he praised during the debate, was a KKK member at one time.
No, she said that he was handed $400 million on a silver platter.
By a guy who had been a member of the KKK.
Exactly. But the big zinger in this for me about Mary Trump is she basically comes out and says that Donald drove her to ketamine therapy, which is, ketamine is like one of the strongest antidepressants.
Really?
It's very controversial. We don't know if it has terrible side effects. Elon Musk is apparently on it. But basically she said, she wrote the third book because she said, I want to live. And having him as my uncle is basically, driving me to despair.
Right.
So.
Well, she said he was a bully who had no friends as a child. And then the former director of Project 2025, which is the blueprint for the Trump administration, if he gets back in, no matter what he says, is saying that Trump is blowing the election by having campaign managers who are not committed to the far right on abortion and trade, and is alienating the base and depressing enthusiasm. If only. This guy, Danz, has also faulted the campaign for agreeing to a historically early debate in June, giving Biden time to drop out and be replaced. And that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, if the debate normally happens in October, and if Biden had that performance then, we were going down. Sorry, we love you, Joe, but anyway. All right. The big win in Delaware.
Oh, yes. Sarah McBride, transgender senator, has won the Democratic primary for Delaware. It's the only House seat. And she actually beat out, I think, 3 other Democrats. So she's definitely favored to win November. And that will mean she will become the first openly transgender member of Congress.
That's going to make a difference in there.
It will.
When people have a seat at the table, she used to work for the Human Rights Campaign, was a bit of a spokesperson there. She's very poised, very close to Joe Biden, who is from Delaware and supports her. wrote the intro to her book, I think. Sarah McBride, congratulations to us all. Having you in there will make a difference, we hope. And by the way, who did Trump rely on for preparing for this debate? Two of the biggest nudniks in history, Tulsi Gabbard, the turncoat Democrat, and Matt Gaetz, who was an absolute nutcase, crazy man, and that's what he relied on. That's what he thought was going to win him the debate. He relied on those people, not on sane people.
Well, it still sounded and it felt to me like he was really off script, and that was his strategy, was to not really have a strategy.
Anyway, all right. Okay, some other news. Our Justice Department announced charges against 2 leaders of the white supremacist Terrogram Collective, which is an international terrorist group that operates on Telegram. We got a picture of Dallas Humber of California, a woman, and Matthew Allison of Idaho. They were charged with soliciting the murder of public officials and soliciting hate crimes, including on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. They had also a plan to ignite
a race war. That is their goal. And this is the problem with these free speech platforms. Telegram is, of course, created by Russian billionaire Pavel Durov, who his private life is a bit of a mystery, but he claims to have fathered over 100 or is it 1,000 children via sperm donation. What other person does he have that in common with? Let me think now, who runs a free speech platform that is supposedly, for everyone's good, but is actually becoming the place where these race baiting is really
Didn't they
terrible.
arrest him in France or something?
Yes, they did. France arrested him. But the problem is, under the guise of free speech, you have incredible seeds of division are being sown under the guise of that.
I'm not very fond of of course I use the internet, but I think it's spoiled a lot of things.
Sure has.
We're old media here with a 1-hour television show. Okay, we've told you how right-wing pressure groups are getting corporations like Lowe's and Ford to drop their commitment to DEI, diversity,
Tractor Supply Company.
and HRC's Corporate Equality Index. So now shareholders of those companies are saying, we're going to fight this, and we're going to go into litigation to get you to readopt these policies, and we want to get rid of the board members who voted to get rid of this. So there's a fight back.
Any companies in particular that spring to mind?
Yes, the ones that have dumped it, like Lowe's and Ford. All right. Arizona's ban on trans athletes in schools was blocked by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So this is going to affect a lot of states. They called it the essence of discrimination. The court found that the court found this is a quote: prepubescent trans girls and trans girls on puberty blockers have no significant advantages over cis girls their own age. That's the evidence that was presented.
And this is, of course, one of those heinous 2022 laws being overturned. There's a bunch of them.
Yes. And then a federal court blocked New Hampshire's ban
Don't have that right
on
now.
trans girls and girls sports. The ruling said the stigma and humiliation that comes from such treatment of a child at the hands of the state is substantial and irreparable. And this was the case brought by 2 trans girls who just wanted to play tennis or whatever the hell it was.
That's right. I remember that case, yes. And we're jumping over to the tourism sector of Florida, I think, was the next thing. Yeah, this is very close to my heart because I was quite visible in the travel segment at the time that Visit Florida, they had a dedicated microsite. They had lots of LGBTQ people saying, come to Florida, come to the Sunshine State. There was so many advertising and marketing
25 years ago,
campaigns.
I was on a press junket to Miami Beach that was just about promoting gay stuff.
There you go. And as you know, several weeks ago, the blogger Rachel Covello from Outcoast.com sounded the alarm when she discovered that the unique link and the unique section of visitflorida.com had mysteriously disappeared, the one that had LGBTQ content. And they, of course, have said that it is about bringing the message of marketing and content in line with taxpayers' dollars and the state's mission. Fine.
There are other places we can go, aren't
and
there?
now where are they? Colorado?
Colorado,
Illinois.
Jared Polis has an out gay governor, and he said, well, since Florida doesn't want you, come on over and explore what Colorado has to offer. In Colorado, we don't really care about who you date. We just appreciate you supporting our economy and spreading money on our great stores and restaurants, and you'll have a gay old time, he said. And then Illinois' bureau sent the message, lack of love in the Sunshine State? Come to Illinois, plan your LGBTQIA adventure. Take notes, Florida, they said. And then Connecticut got in the action too. I guess all of them will.
Michigan, look, there's so much potential here, especially for the more regional destinations.
Right. So the woman you mentioned, Rachel Covello, she has a section of her website called Enjoy Queer Florida, and she's petitioning to restore the dozens of pages that the state of Florida wiped out on resources and attractions for LGBTQ people.
Well, just as it's, the marketing is dependent on taxpayers' dollars, all those people featured on the website's content are small business owners.
Yeah.
They're people that really need the support of tourism.
Yeah.
I just think you're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. It's really ridiculous.
All right. In Manhattan, where we sit, we've told you about the Anti-Trans Education Council member, Maud Merryn, who was removed from the board because she made offensive comments about gender identity and other things.
Yes.
Well, she was reinstated by a federal judge.
Yes, under the guise of course, free speech. Yet again, the judge found that school's chancellor, David Banks, violated her free speech rights by ousting her from the position.
Well, she's a horror show. She's very aligned with Moms for Liberty. She will get her place back on the powerless advisory board, but hasn't decided whether to seek re-election next year. No, she probably thinks she can run for mayor now.
Probably.
She's, rather grandiose. All right.
Down in Virginia at Sweetbriar College, are we talking about that?
When I went to the University of Virginia, that was one of our sister schools.
Was it? What
Yes,
are they like?
Down the road in Lynchburg. I was in Charlottesville.
Well, it's so interesting.
I did not go on dates with anybody in Sweetbriar. No, but a lot of the guys did.
Yeah. I went to a single-sex school, and we literally had the boys' school across the creek.
Well, we had just become co-ed the year before I came at UVA.
Right.
A public university only became integrated sexually in 1970.
What's interesting about this case to me is, in a way, my heart goes out for them because, look, here we have a school that was founded by a man who lost his little girl, Daisy. She died prematurely. So what does he do? He starts a college that's to be for these young girls and young women. And he's obviously got this very idyllic, 19th century vision of womanhood. So based on his will, which was executed in 1900, he said that this private liberal arts college was to be a place of girls and young women.
Well, that's the way they're interpreting it. So this is one of the few women's colleges to say we're not accepting trans girls in our school, girls and women.
It's this whole thing again about taking documents of founding fathers a little too literally and not keeping up with the times.
23 women's colleges do allow trans girls and
Sweetbriar had previously admitted
they did.
Trans women on a case-by-case basis.
The faculty senate voted 48-4 against what the board did. And the students are and they called it morally repugnant what the board did. And the students are up in arms about this too.
I think so. It's
so,
against
you're
against
probably
the time.
going to lose students as a result of this who don't like your retrograde attitudes.
When I read this story, I had visions of this old Australian movie called Picnic at Hanging Rock, with all of the women running around in white lace and, soft focus and picking daisies. Oh, my goodness. I think we have to move on, don't we?
It used to be that way.
It did used to be that way. All right.
All right. This is a horror story from Wisconsin.
Oh, dear. Yes. Which one? So
the
boy
Green
in
Bay Correctional Institution.
Terrible 19-year-old Mika Laureano has been killed by his cellmate for simply being black and gay.
19 years old. 19,
awful. Prosecutors have charged Jackson Vogel, 24, with first-degree intentional homicide and hate crime. This is at Green Bay Correctional Institution.
His family is asking he be remembered by planting a tree or contributing to the National Alliance on Mental Illness or by supporting students with special needs. He had been sentenced to 2 years for a battery during a fight in Waukesha County. The alleged victim, who previously met Micah through a dating app, His cellmate was 24, had been sentenced to 40 years for attempted homicide. This guy's named Jackson Vogel, and he's been charged with first-degree murder with hate crime, and he's a repeat offender. Vogel, who was white, admitted the killing was based on his bias. He knocked Micah out, tied him up, strangled him to death. He said he killed him because he was bored. I mean, this is what you're...
Goodness me.
They can't control anything in these prisons. Why he had to share a cell with a psychopath, I don't know. All right. The FBI is doing a civil rights investigation in Houston.
Oh, yes, this is very interesting. So a park ranger by the name of Joey Lamar Ellis is under investigation over alleged LGBTQ extortion and possible sexual assault. Basically, what's been happening is this former Houston Park Ranger has been allegedly using his position to extort individuals in various parks across the city.
He'd block your car,
Yep.
and then he'd say, oh, you're guilty of something, roll down the window or open the car door, and then he would extort.
Give me money or else.
And sexually abuse you.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff that he did.
So five people have come forward, and they expect more to come forward.
Well, he's been charged with something called official oppression, and he was arrested back in June, and the bond was set at $30,000 this week. Okay. And then I almost don't want to touch the story, but tell us about Alex Ray Scott.
I don't want to either, but the truth is it's apparently happening, and this issue of people being incarcerated. So Alex Ray Scott is a trans suspect in the murder
28.
28, in the murder of a New York City Upper East Side antiques dealer.
Transgender now.
Yeah, so Scott fled Oklahoma in 2019 initially to escape allegations that she molested a 5-year-old. But there was another crime after this. Scott apparently murdered and dismembered their roommate, their housemate, Robin Skogdapol, 63, with a chainsaw, and then buried parts of the body in a creek on Cherokee land. So this is a big ball of string. Where we last left this, the Supreme Court on Monday basically has accepted Scott's admission.
Well, she comes to New York and she goes on an app and meets this antiques dealer, Kenneth Savinsky, and kills him in 2020.
He's 64 years of age, which is ironically the same age basically as the person that she was living with back in Oklahoma.
Well,
so I do wonder about the personality of this suspect. But anyway,
I don't.
it's if there's a personality disorder is what I'm thinking. But listen, they walked into a police station in New York and said, I think I may have killed someone last night. They did, apparently. So we're looking at maybe a sentence of 40 years, unless there's a plea deal, and then it'll be about 20-something years.
Well, she'll be sentenced in New York and in Oklahoma.
Yes.
All right, and you all heard about the horrible story of the 14-year-old school shooter in Georgia who killed 4 people and injured 9 others. Colt Gray, there's a picture of him, was apparently bullied in school by classmates who called him gay, according to his father.
To the father, but increasingly I just don't know that we can trust anything the father says.
Well, it's never surprising to hear that these kids who lash out in this outrageous way were bullied. And this is the way they're getting back at society by taking a gun to school and just shooting it up because there are too many goddamn guns around. Of course, why did he have a gun? His father gave him an AR-15 to Christmas to his mentally unstable 13-year-old at the time son.
And that's even after the FBI had paid them a visit and basically quizzed the father on the front porch. The son comes out. Everyone's having a good chat about did he mean to really post a threat to shoot up the school on Discord, which is an app a lot of gamers use? And he's like, oh, no, I don't think it was me. It could be,
the father gave him the gun because he said, you need to get out and stop just playing video games.
Right.
And he did.
Right, there you go.
All right. Let's talk about somebody lovely that we lost. The celebrated art director and photographer Lloyd Ziff, who died at the age of 81.
Oh, yes.
Survived by his husband, Stephen Kilman.
Yes, I'm trying to find my notes on this because basically Lloyd did a lot of interesting work in magazine publishing that I certainly was very influenced by. Basically, he brought back Vanity Fair from the dead, I think, and really did remount that visually. my memory of his sort of era of magazine design was that he was elevating it. I mean, he was involved in the artistic direction of Condé Nast Traveller, Travel and Leisure magazine.
House of Garden, Rolling Stone.
Yeah, it was the idea of these publications, of course, existed, but he really did elevate them in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
He got famous for photographing his art school classmate, Robert Mapplethorpe, in 1968 at the time.
And Patti Smith.
That he was living with Patti Smith in a small apartment in Brooklyn. And those pictures, those intimate pictures,
They're
they weren't
iconic.
sex pictures.
They're iconic,
exactly.
yeah.
But he did everything. Annie Leibovitz said she was inspired by him. He was known for his intellectual flash and dynamic color sense. And he said, the reason I stuck with magazines, doing magazines for so long, is because I wanted to give work to my friends.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. But there was aesthetically, there was a great leap forward. You've all seen the cheesy magazines of the 50s and 60s, and then suddenly they change.
Yes.
And a lot of them had to do with the idea of high art can come to print and can be on the newsstand.
Yes.
And he was a lot of that.
He sure did. We have an update on that police attack on a St. Louis gay bar last winter, the Bar PM. You know, the police crashed the car into the bar, and then the owners come out and they beat one up and they arrest the other one. And this was all done by an officer named Ramel Wallace. Well, he's now left the department after 16 years. He had a history of abuse, but the owners are suing him and the department, but the city, the DA has yet to drop the criminal case against the co-owner, Chad Morris, despite the fact that it's obvious that this guy Wallace was the one in the wrong. They never give up.
No.
All right, international news.
Yes.
Take us to Tonga.
Oh, Tonga, which as you may or may not know, is a small independent island nation in the South Pacific, part of obviously the Ring of Fire.
171 islands.
171, very good. But basically it is part of the British Commonwealth. It is part of the United Nations. And they have just had their new Chief of Justice, Malcolm Leslie Bishop, sworn in. He happens to be out gay. Yeah. Now, he's got a 4-year term ahead of him, and he is also the Lord Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and the President of the Land Court of Tonga. So he's a pretty high-ranking official there. This is miraculous that he's an out gay man, hailing from Wales in the UK, simply because sodomy is illegal in Tonga.
And there are lawyers there who are raising this, that he may be a criminal. He's lived with his partner for 51 years.
He may be a criminal in the eyes of the nation. Also, it's going to be sticky for him if he has to oversee any court cases pertaining to sodomy, such as the 2021 case, when Tonga's then Chief Justice sentenced an 18-year-old male to 42 months in jail after sodomising a 14-year-old teen.
Well, that's abuse of a kid, but that's different.
And they can also whip you in Tonga. Also, that's a penalty.
Yikes! Well, this is a guy who pursued a theology degree at Oxford and recently started translating the New Testament into modern English.
These anti-sodomy laws, though, listen, I mean, if you're part of the United Nations and the Commonwealth of Nations, you really do need to, these need to be repealed. Let's see if William and Kate can do that for us.
And if he's been with his partner for 51 years, I hope you were violating the sodomy law. All right.
So there's Tonga.
Take us to Serbia. They had their Pride March in Belgrade.
Yes, Belgrade has had their Pride March under big police protection, heavy police protection in central Belgrade, simply because there could be possible attacks from right-wing extremists.
Yep.
Organisers said that previously in the week, assailants had assaulted a young gay man in the city and took away his rainbow flag. So they were worried about that escalating.
But Serbia is seeking EU membership.
Again, they need to, if they're going to want to be part of the union, they need to look at this.
Program.
But no incidents were reported.
And the march included dozens of Russians who had emigrated over the Ukraine war. In Russia, of course, Pride marches are absolutely forbidden.
Right.
The Belgrade mayor opposed this march, but the liberal government ministers did march, and Western ambassadors participated.
Yeah, Serbia.
And then the Paralympics are now done in Paris.
Yes.
And if Team LGBTQ, of the people who participated, were a country, the 28 medals that they won would place them 17th among nations, better than Germany and Canada. So here we have a picture of American para swimmer Christy Raleigh Crossley, who led the out athletes with 4 medals, 2 gold and 2 silver.
Good job. That's 3 medals in total ahead of the Tokyo Paralympics, where the count was 25. So we're gaining.
In Zimbabwe, 2 guys got in a dispute over their relationship, over money.
These darlings weren't thinking, were they? Basically, they're having what I think was some kind of domestic situation over infidelity and money. Somebody took money from the other one, so they call in the coppers, and the police are saying, what kind of evidence do you have for this? And they're like, here are our phones. Here's the proof. And of course, on the phones, guess what's on there? Evidence of their sexual relationship with each other, which is illegal.
They are now subject to, they're charged with sodomy,
yes,
and they face 14 years in prison.
Yes, 28-year-old and 25-year-old young men, and it's not right either. The catch-22 situation here is, who do you call when you're in trouble? Well, you can't call the police, can you?
Alan Turing, the very famous, British guy who basically invented modern computers and saved us in World War II. He was in the 50s, having a problem with a roommate who was stealing from him or something, and he called the cops, and the cops come and looking at it, and they're going, well, what's going on here?
Yes,
and he got arrested for buggery,
yes,
and was said you can have prison or you can have hormone treatments, and that's what they get. That's what he subjected himself to.
Look, it's terrible. Again, these penalties in Zimbabwe date back to colonial era Rhodesia and have just become more draconian.
Let's talk about somebody we lost this week in Ireland. Legendary journalist from originally from Derry, feminist, LGBTQ rights campaigner, and Irish nationalist, Nell McCafferty, who has died at the age of 80.
80. She lived in a nursing home in a rural area of northwest Ireland. She had been in declining health for a number of years following a stroke. But listen, she was very, very, we would call her a real firebrand. And, I always think bit of a dyke. And I mean that in a really good way. You want something done, get a dyke to do it. She basically was a correspondent for the Irish Times. She's the author of 6 books, including a memoir. And here's a statement from Irish Prime Minister Simon Harris. In an Ireland trying to emerge from the shadows and find who it was, Nell McCafferty was one of the people who knew exactly who she was and wasn't afraid to enter every battle for gay and women's rights.
She was a founding member of the Irish Women's Liberation Movement that in 1971 carried condoms from Northern Ireland, where they were legal, to Dublin, where they were still, condoms were illegal.
Yes.
And they did this on the train and made a big show of it. She was in the crowd in Derry on Bloody Sunday in 1972 when British soldiers fired on Irish demonstrators, killing 14 in the neighborhood where she grew up. She supported the IRA. She began her support for gay rights in the 70s. She was lesbian herself, but I have a close friend, Bernard Lynch, who lives in Ireland and lived next door to her, and she was with Nuala O'Phelan for about 15 years. But Nell said, I'm not coming out till my mother dies.
No.
And so it's so odd for someone who was so fierce about everything, to say, well, on that score, I'm going to, everybody knows sort of, Nuala and I are together, but I'm not talking about it until my mother dies.
Yeah, it's not an uncommon story, and there's a very, very steep price to pay often in coming out.
Well, she was quite a trailblazer. My friend Bernard said that she was, what did he say? She was indeed formidable and did not suffer fools gladly.
No.
Okay. All right. New York Times had a story about how the Pope has fervent fans among Indonesia's transgender community.
That was a lovely story. On news that the Pope was visiting Jakarta, a group of trans women who lived in a homeless shelter or a halfway house dressed up in their finest to go and catch a glimpse of him.
With a priest.
With a priest.
Who supports them.
They are devout Catholics, by the way, these women, and even though they're pushed to the fringes of Indonesian society, they are in fact finding the church to be a haven for them. So they were very excited about the Pope's 4-day visit. They apparently, 10 of them, crammed into 2 different rental cars in the hope of seeing them, but they were turned away by the police there and went home eventually. One of them says, I can still talk to Francis in my dreams.
Apparently, the Jakarta Archbishop tells his priests to welcome transgender people into their parishes as part of a movement to respect human dignity.
Yes.
And a Jesuit priest makes it a point to get his hair cut with their group once a month. 50-plus trans women attend a prayer service at the cathedral. Two of them became cooking instructors there. So despite Francis saying that trans surgery is an affront to human dignity, these trans people, they hear from him a message of inclusiveness. They love him. All right. Buried within a big-time story on the workers in the Amazon rainforest who gather all the data on how trees and plants are capturing carbon. This is a very important environmental story. Was the story of Loris Sangama, who had been climbing and measuring trees for almost 20 years.
Very nice.
She is the only transgender person in her village in Colombia of Palmares. And she says, in our community, trans is seen as something horrible, something that shouldn't exist. But because I do science, I prove I have a role and that there's no distinction between a man and a woman's work. So they elected her chief of the village.
That's wonderful.
It's remarkable. We have so many
nice.
sad stories about what happens to trans people around the world. That's a great one.
Exactly, in the Amazon. I've got some late breaking news from Australia. I'll get this in very quickly if I can. This is a landmark court ruling has just come out. An openly gay member of Parliament, Alex Greenwich, he's an independent in New South Wales, has won a defamation case against Mark Latham, another state politician, who was the leader of the right-wing One Nation. He's been awarded $140,000 about a tweet that defamed him because he was called disgusting by this Mr. Latham.
That's all he had to do was call him disgusting?
Call him disgusting, engages in disgusting sexual activities was the inference, and basically this has been found in Australia to be defamation. The judgment establishes some case law now to protect the LGBTQ community in public speech.
Here, a federal judge would reinstate you and say your free speech rights were being violated.
Good.
Well, you know, the BBC, they started including same-sex couples on their Strictly Come Dancing show 5 years ago. Here's the couple that was on 5 years ago. But now they've decided to, after 5 years, we're not going to have same-sex couples anymore.
Do you know what's odd about this? It is the 20th anniversary coming up of the show, but there's been all of these reports against one of the male members there on the show who's straight, Giovanni Pernice. All these women are leaving the show. So why are they persecuting the gay couples when there's a different...
Maybe to distract from
Maybe to distract.
that.
Anyway, several same-sex couples have made it to the finals in 2019, 2021 and 2023.
In South Africa, a horrifying story.
Yeah, that's
Lesbian
very
couple
sad.
was shot to death in Edendale while getting into a taxi. The suspect is the male ex-partner of one of the women and the father of her child who couldn't accept the relationship and had harassed them in the past. One of them had filed for an order of protection, but these two women, 28 and 22, were murdered. And the Uthingo Network, which is the regional LGBTQ group, said the brutal act highlights the deep-seated homophobia and violence that persists in South Africa. The suspect is yet to be apprehended, and this is a country that was the first in the world to add sexual orientation to its constitution.
Yeah, 6-hour drive
doesn't solve all the problems.
Joburg. No arrests have been made.
Right.
What's happening with MPOX?
Well, the big news on MPOX, first of all, everybody, get your MPOX vaccine. This new strain that's out there, it's circulating in Africa, and we need to get vaccines to them to contain it. That's the big problem right now, but it is spreading to the West and other places, and South America, Asia, all this kind of stuff. And it's more transmissible and it's more deadly. So get your 2 vaccines. And New York has just made that easier. The health commissioner, there he is, James McDonald, has authorized pharmacies to give you the MPOX vaccine without a prescription. So it's not hard now. Just do it. Okay. And there's going to be a celebration of the late gay artist David Wojnarowicz is on his 70th birthday on Saturday, September 14th at 5 p.m. at the New York City AIDS Memorial. That's down there at 7th Avenue and 12th Street. They're going to read from his works, play some music. A new weapon has been developed in the fight against HIV, a molecular mimic that invades the cell and steals essential proteins from the virus. Very clever. It's promising results in monkeys, and they're going to test it on about 5 humans. And you'll get a single injection, and the idea is to interfere with HIV's normal life cycle. Now, there's already treatments out there, but this one could be, a game changer.
Game changer, yes. I believe congratulations are in order for the 2 Evan Hansens. Ben Platt has married his longtime love,
That's
Noah
Ben there
Galvin.
on the right, and Noah Galvin.
Yes,
on
they
the
had
left.
an epic wedding on the weekend. They were married on Sunday in Red Hawk. They had a Shabbat welcome dinner on the Friday night. They had a bar hang at Cellar Dog in the West Village on the Saturday night. I think they had a sing-along, sort of Murray Crisis style. And they were married by Platt's longtime rabbi. And their mums at the ceremony performed a duet of a Jewish wedding song.
Well, it was quite a wedding, and Vogue magazine?
Yeah, you said Vogue, yeah.
Vogue magazine published 81 pictures of this wedding. And if you want to be on our email list, or you're on our email list, we'll send you the link, and you can see all these fun pictures of their wedding.
Yep.
On Sunday, September 22nd at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, a novel by the late gay activist Arnie Kantrowitz is going to be discussed by Arnie's longtime love of his life, Larry Mass, and author Bill Goldstein. It's a free event, and it's going to be live streamed from New York's LGBTQ Center. The novel is called Song of Myself. It's described as a trenchant novel for gay life in these rapidly devolving reactionary times.
Sounds good.
How about Will Ferrell?
I love this. He's done a wonderful documentary with a trans friend. It's called Will and Harper. It explores the friendship of these long-term buddies as they embark on a road trip across the country after Harper Steele comes out as a transgender woman. This will be on Netflix on September 27th.
It's getting rave reviews.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting combination of somebody we know and trust, Will Ferrell, and it's a true life story. And who doesn't like a road trip?
Yeah, it's coming out in time to stem some of the anti-trans hate that is being spread these days.
Yes.
They work together at SNL.
That's right.
I'm going to be on a forum on the late political scientist Ken Sherrill, who died this past year, at Hunter College's Roosevelt House on September 19th at 5:30, that's 47 East 65th Street. I'm going to be on a panel with people who worked and lived with him, former city controller Scott Stringer and 2 other political scientists, Patrick Egan and Gabriel Magny, and a state senator who was one of his students. So it should be interesting. And we're almost out of time. Any other thoughts for the week?
We did it. Look at that, with half a minute to spare.
It's been quite an exhausting week. We were up very late after the
Yes.
debate, gathering our thoughts.
That's right.
It's obviously a lot of us can't wait for this to be over, but it's never over, folks. I mean, we're always going to have to work to make things better.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. It's been a lovely show.
Yes, and thank you for being with us. And I'll be back with Ann next week.